I was supposed to do this video about, let's see here, 4 hours ago. Let's call it 4 hours ago. Then the news broke that Shane van Gisbergen signed a contract extension, so we had to push it back. Then it was supposed to be about, hour and a half, maybe even 2 hours ago. Then the NASCAR Truck Series just kept trucking on. They kept on trucking into each other and wrecking each other, and that race went long. So here we are, 8 p.m. at the time of recording here in the United States of America, which is actually like prime time in Australia and New Zealand. So this works out well that this is Shane van Gisbergen and not like, Chase Elliott or William Byron. Anywho, back to the point at hand. Championship case number 4 after long last. This is not a prediction, ladies and gentlemen. We do this for all 16 playoff drivers. We've already done 3. We've done Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson, and Christopher Bell. Today, we focus on Shane van Gisbergen. This is going to be one of the most tough championship cases I have ever had to make in my 6 years of making this series. The most difficult was Harrison Burton last year. I don't think that's going to be as difficult as that, but it's going to be quite difficult. And it's not because of Shane van Gisbergen and the fact that he's a very good driver. Yes, it's because he has very limited oval experience. And I think ultimately anyways, we're not here to talk about why he won't. We're here to talk about how he will win the NASCAR Cup Series championship. So, Shane van Gisbergen's season so far. He has 3 wins on the season, all on the road. He won the first ever NASCAR race in Mexico City. He then went on and won where he started it all at the Chicago Street Race, and then he dominated once again at Sonoma. Those are his 3 wins, and in fact, he has one more top 10, and that also came at the road on the Circuit of the Americas. So, Shane van Gisbergen, 4 top 10s, all on the road courses, but he has 3 wins. He has a couple stage wins, so he has 17 playoff points. Despite being 25th in the point standings, he has 17 playoff points to his name. Point number 1, as I make for everyone else, get as many playoff points as you can. There's no such thing as too many of them. Ask Kevin Harvick in 2020. It does not matter who you are, you need them. But Shane van Gisbergen especially needs them, especially when we look at this first round. So Watkins Glen this weekend, another road course. Go get yourself a win. Go sweep the stages. Get 7 bonus points, 5 bonus points, 1 bonus point. Get as many playoff points as you possibly can because you're going to need them in these playoffs. He cannot get into the top 10 of the standings, so there is no extra bonus points for him in that regard. Now this first round, I'm going to admit, this is a pretty tough round for him. But if he can get through this round, making the round of 8, very possible because there's a road course in that second round. First round is not pretty. It's just not pretty at all. The first race actually is kind of pretty. It's Darlington, the Southern 500. SVG has been very vocal about how much he enjoys Darlington Raceway. Now, we have a small sample size on the numbers, as we do for every single track, because he's only been in NASCAR since 2023, and he's only made starts on these ovals once or twice in Cup, and once or twice or none in Xfinity. But Darlington, a track he's been very open about that he enjoys very, very much. And in fact, the numbers back him up. Last year in the Xfinity Series, a 15th in the spring race, a 7th in the fall race. And in fact, in his first ever Southern 500, his first Cup race at Darlington, and the Southern 500, one of the most demanding races, physically, emotionally, mentally, whatever other ways, he finished 26th, which is not that bad, honestly. And then in the spring this year, finished 20th, and that was a time that Trackhouse was not doing too hot. So Shane van Gisbergen, I'm not going to lie, they got to put a lot of pressure on this race. I'm talking, they're going to have probably 17 to 25 bonus points heading into this race, let's call it. Let's split the difference and call it 22. I guess 21 would be truly splitting the difference, but let's say he wins Watkins Glen and let's give him the extra. He has 22 bonus points. That can afford him. I really don't think he can afford a bad race in this round. Even with the bonus points, I really don't think he can. I think Darlington, he has to go out in top 10. That may be a stretch. Maybe he can top 15 this race, but I think he might need a top 10. Score a couple stage points. That is a heavy emphasis I'm going to put for Shane van Gisbergen and this 88 team. They have to qualify better. If they want to advance in these playoffs, they have to qualify better. They have to be running better at the beginning of the race to put themselves in position to score stage points, whether it's stage 2 or stage 1. Stage 1, they're going to, at some point in these playoffs, they are going to need stage points. They can't be qualifying 31st. They can't be qualifying 26th. They got to qualify better. That's the fact of the matter. They cannot afford poor qualifying efforts consistently. So for this first race, for Shane van Gisbergen to advance, I truly think they got to put a lot of pressure on themselves at Darlington. I think they got to score a top 10. I think they got to score some stage points and build a bit of a buffer on that cutoff line. There's going to be guys who have a bad race here. There's going to be guys who crash. If you go in with 22 bonus points, score a top 10, which is another 28 to 30 something bonus or points, score 5 or so stage points, you're looking at a very healthy gap to the cutoff line because the next 2 races are not good for Shane van Gisbergen. First up, we have Gateway. What are Shane van Gisbergen's statistics at Gateway? Me and him have put up the same number of statistics at Gateway. Shane van Gisbergen has never been at Gateway. He's never made a lap, however you want to phrase that. Xfinity did not go to this track last year. Cup, when they were there, SVG was not there because I think that was the same week as Portland. So Shane van Gisbergen has never touched this track in a Cup Series car, in a NASCAR stock car, and it does not help that there's not a comparable track to it in any sense, really. Maybe New Hampshire, maybe Phoenix, but not really. It's its own kind of thing. SVG's never been there. This has got to be their mulligan. Ultimately, if they can top 10 that first race at Darlington, get a big points day there, this can be their mulligan, but they cannot afford a DNF. They cannot afford to finish in the 30s. If they run 26th on pace, a couple guys have a bad day maybe, they might be able to afford that. But if they can do what they've done in their first trips to Kansas, for example, Texas, for example, survive, make all the laps, stay on the lead lap, and finish 18th to 22nd, that's a good day. That's a good day of points after a top 10 at Darlington. And I think that puts them in a decent enough position at Bristol to advance. But once again, if they have a mad day at Darlington and run 18th, they have a bad day at Gateway and run 28th, they're potentially heading into Bristol at a cutoff race on a close points line, +6, -6, even. This is not the track for SVG to be in a close points battle because he struggled at Bristol this spring. The numbers aren't pretty. As I said, once again, it's a low sample size, but qualified 36th, finished 38th, and there was a wreck somewhere in there. Once again, just this first round is brutal for SVG. If this was last year's playoffs, I'd put him in the round of 8. Watkins Glen was in the first round. The Roval was in the second round, and there were super speedways around it, so he could get points there just in case he didn't win the road courses. Well, this year it's the opposite. This is like the disaster schedule for SVG in the playoffs. Like, seriously, if this first round, if he can make it out of this first round, that's a success, if we're being brutally honest. Just ultimately, I think Darlington is a really good track for him. I think a top 10 is seriously an achievable goal for him and for this team. It's the next 2 races I am extremely concerned about. A track he has never made a lap on in Bristol, a track that he struggled mightily at in the spring. But if they can find a way to score enough points at Darlington to survive and put a decent result together at Gateway and scoot by at Bristol, this second round is actually extremely manageable, if you ask me. The first race is Kansas. He scored a top 20 at Kansas in the spring. He has raced at Kansas in the Xfinity Series, scored a top 10 in his Xfinity Series debut at this track last fall. Very comparable to Las Vegas, where in the Xfinity Series he had mechanical failures in stage 1 of both races, but has made 2 races in the Cup Series. So he has a lot of laps at Kansas now. He has a lot of laps at a track similar to Kansas and Las Vegas. And remember, his best Cup finish on an oval to date, at least in 2025, is at 1.5 miles at Charlotte, a 14th place finish. So a good day at Kansas cannot be ruled out. I think a top 15, that's a good day. That's a solid day. Once again, people are going to have problems. Other contenders are going to have problems. The second race is a little bit more of an issue. Now, SVG did run this race in the Xfinity Series, and he ran 18th at New Hampshire, but I mean, honestly, for a lot of the ovals in the Xfinity Series, like the results are 15th, 16th, 17th to 18th. Like he probably had an average finish somewhere in there on the ovals last year because that's just where he ended up. So ultimately, that's kind of like the question mark. What's he going to do there? I don't know. But if he can get like a top 15 at Kansas, top 20 at New Hampshire, I think that's an achievable goal. Now, ultimately, I don't know if that's going to be enough points to advance, but the crutch you're leaning on in this round is the Charlotte Roval. The Charlotte Roval is a road course. Need I say more? Shane van Gisbergen has made one Cup start at this track. He has a pole 21-lap sled. Now, he finished 7th in that race, and if he doesn't do well enough in those first two races, the 7th place finish won't cut it. But ultimately, he's going to be the heavy favorite heading into this race. He's probably going to win it if we're being real, and that will get you into the round of 8. He can go have a stinker at Kansas. He can have a stinker at New Hampshire. As long as he wins at the Roval, he advances. Simple as that. And if he wins at the Roval, he's in the round of 8. Round of 8, you just need a couple things to go your way. Now, the first race is Las Vegas. Once again, this track just you know how last week, if you guys watched the SVG recap, we talked about how SVG hates Iowa. He hasn't said that, but we're presuming because he's had 4 crashes there in 2 race weekends. Well, it's the opposite. Las Vegas hates Shane van Gisbergen. Last year, 2 Xfinity Series starts, didn't make it out of stage 1. Mechanical failures in both of those races. This spring at Las Vegas, spun out, had some damage, had some sort of crash. That ended their day. And then last fall, he ran this race and he finished 29th. So not the prettiest numbers, but as I said, I think a big thing about Kansas being 3 weeks prior is that he's getting some lap time at a very similar track within a 4-week window, and he's done pretty decent at these 1.5 miles in Cup and Xfinity. But once again, it's got to be a top 10. It really has to be a top 10, and it's got to be stage points. If he makes it to this point of the postseason, he needs stage points because your contenders, your competition, it's going to be the top of the top. It's going to be Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell, Denny Hamlin, William Byron, Ryan Blaney, drivers and teams like that are running top 6, top 7 on the ovals every single week. Ultimately, something's going to happen to 1 or 2 of them. Someone's going to blow a tire. Someone's going to have a loose wheel. Someone's going to have a mechanical failure. But you can't bet on 4 of those guys having that. You have to perform. You have to show up. And I think Vegas, you got to show up and you got to score a top 10. Score some stage points. But the good thing for SVG is that the middle race of this round is a random race. It's Talladega, where anything can happen and anyone can win. This could very well be his first oval win. We've seen a lot of guys get their first career wins in NASCAR at a super speedway, whether it's Daytona or Talladega. While SVG is a multi-time winner in the Cup Series, he's yet to win on an oval. That is his next big achievement. I guess technically the top 10 on the oval. But we're making another point here. He cannot afford to get crashed out of this race. This is a race that's probably more than likely going to take out multiple playoff drivers. I said earlier, you need 4 guys to have something go wrong in one race. This would be the race that this happens. This race is random. This race is silly. There's fuel mileage. There's giant wrecks that take out 28 cars. Simply put, they got to finish top 6. I'm going to put that as the number. There's no hard math. There's no hard science. This is me guesstimating. But if they can top 10 at Vegas, if they can top 6 at Talladega, have some other people have problems, they actually might be in a decent position heading into Martinsville, which if you remember, to date, at the time of this video recording, Shane van Gisbergen's best oval finish in NASCAR is at Martinsville, where he scored a 12th place finish last fall. But back to the previous point, cannot afford a poor qualifying effort at Martinsville. If you have a poor qualifying effort at Martinsville, you're done. You are cooked. If he qualifies in the 30s like he did in the spring, it's over. Probably won't get a quick caution. You might, but probably not. Because it's such a short track, the leaders are lapping people very quick, very early in this race. If you're running 30th, you can't pass. Short tracks are awful in the next gen car. It's impossible to pass. You're going to be stuck in 30th. You're going to get lapped early. You're never going to get the lap back. Your season's over. So they have to qualify well. They have to make their way into a decent position. And ultimately for this round, top 10 at Vegas, top 6 at Talladega, and bet on other people getting taken out, and a top 12 at Martinsville, that might be enough. Maybe. In this situation, in this championship case, it's going to be enough. And Phoenix, honestly, it's the last race of the season. You never know what's going to happen. All you got to do is beat 3 other guys. But Shane van Gisbergen's Xfinity numbers are actually very good at Phoenix. He had a 6th place finish in the spring of 2024 at the Xfinity race. And in the championship Xfinity race, he finished 12th. So a good average finish of 9th, good top 10. Ultimately, to win the championship at Phoenix, you're probably going to need race-winning speed, but late race caution falls your way, alternate strategy falls your way. You never know. It's NASCAR. We have a dumb format. So Shane van Gisbergen, it's going to be a tough road to win the championship for him, but I do this for all 16. I got to do it for all 16. Ultimately, to recap this in a couple sentences, you got to lean heavily on that Darlington race in the first round, and you cannot afford a massive screw-up at Gateway and Bristol. Second round, you're probably leaning on the Roval, but even not, it's a pretty decent round. Get a top 10 at Kansas, that's reasonable, or top 15, top 10. New Hampshire, don't mess up. That's a possibility, and then just go win the Roval to ease all the pain. Round of 8, you can't afford a bad race here. Straight up cannot afford a bad race, or else you have to win. But if you can manage a good race at Vegas, a really good race at Vegas, if you can manage to survive the chaos of Talladega, score a really, really good result, then that takes the pressure off Martinsville, and then at Phoenix, anything can happen. So we didn't have a lot of numbers to go off of today. It was a lot of guesstimating, a lot of everything, but we got Watkins Glen this weekend. Shane van Gisbergen's doing the Xfinity Series and the Cup Series races, in which he might win both, or if he doesn't, he probably loses to Connor Zillage. It's more than likely the scenario either way. We'll resume the championship case video starting next week on Monday with I Don't Know Who. We'll re-rack the points, see where we sit on Sunday night. But we will continue to do this over the next couple of weeks before the playoff starts. If you missed any of the first 3, go check out the playlist. If you're watching this 2 weeks in advance and want to know, what's the Austin Cindric championship case? Well, guess what? It's also going to be in that playlist. So thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. We got a lot of these to go. This is probably going to be the most difficult one for me, though, so I guess glad to get it out of the way. That sounded really bad.